I'm going to present a reading comprehension, a multiple model, a multiple component model for assessment for learning, AFL. And we are in the process of developing it, and I will present results that we have now. So the overview of my topic is rationale for developing the multiple component measure for assessing comprehension, the theoretical basis for the test development, research, it is a pilot research of course, measure results and reader profiles, which I'm very interested in, and also implication for instruction for both studying the dynamic phases of the test, conclusions and implication. So first about the rationale, and this is really briefly short, because it was driven from two main areas. The first one was the critique in the literature of reading comprehension test. I will mention only 2 points. One, the variance between tests. Relatively low correlations between reading comprehension tests demonstrate that they do not rely on similar theoretical background and may assess different components and processes. And by relatively low correlation, I mean that the student can get one score in one test and another score in the other test, and the correlation between them will be low. Test components that existing tests do not really reflect multi-component models of reading comprehension, as they do not really address all the related cognitive, linguistic, metacognitive, and emotional factors. We know that the simple view of reading, and I don't have to mention it so much in this audience, explain between 38 to 89% of variance, depending on the orthography in which it is conducted and the structure. If we look at the multiple component view of reading comprehension and we take it from the RAND model and add a lot more literature, then we know that we have the 3 phases of development of basic reading skills. In Israel, there is a model of developing reading development in Hebrew, which is a doctoral thesis made by Amalia Bar-On, supervised by Professor Dorit, showing that in first phase, children rely more on phonological decoding, but they may transfer to more phonological decoding, and then they reach fluency. And when we talk about comprehension and go according to the RAND, then we can expand 3 components. First is the test, the type of the questions, and the comprehension level that they target. So the comprehension test may vary because of different levels of questions and because different types of questions. And they say that if you have open questions or closed questions, you get different results from some children. As to the text, we can manipulate genre, content, domain, length, and linguistic complexity. But the main point is to enlarge our looking at the reader component. So not only cognition and language, which is vocabulary and morphology, but also at emotions, things that Tami Katzir really brought into our work here in the department, the self-perceptions, the reading self-concept, motivation, interest, and metacognition, which is strategies, confidence, monitoring, and calibration. And we wanted to incorporate all this into our new measure of comprehension. So the first source was looking at multiple component. The second was the literature about assessment processes. And I have to say that as a student of Bar-Ilan, I was a student of Professor Feuerstein, my belief always was in dynamic assessment in addition to what we call static phase, meaning the score that you get from the child gives you nothing. You really don't know what's going on, not in the brain of the child, what was difficult for him, what was easy for him, you know nothing. You just get the score. And if you want to gain more knowledge about the child and to enhance him more, then you need dynamic phase. And in this dynamic phase, you need AFL or assessment for learning or mediated learning, or as you name it. So mediated learning will include reciprocal dialogue between the student and the teacher and feedback that can enhance learning. Feedback is also a thing that ENAT is working on with the supervision of competency. The theoretical basis for our test, I will go briefly about how we enlarge the model. So first, and this is interesting, we decided to measure reading rate accuracy, types of errors, and text vocabulary knowledge within the text himself, and not outside. Usually when you go to have a test or analysis, you get an exam in words reading and so on. This is good, but I don't have time to show you that external measures have lower relationship to the comprehension test, and the within text measure have higher relationship. About types of or levels of comprehension, we wanted to not only test the text simple reading skills according to the pairs like explicit meaning or understanding the text structure or inferencing things within the data which is in the text, but also to tap complex reading skills. It has to do more with integration of text information with prior knowledge and experience and integration with ideas in other texts. So integration of several texts, not only within the text. So we did that. We also wanted to incorporate, to enlarge or expand the reader characteristic by incorporating reading self-concept, and the term proposed by Chapman. It explains between 6 to 17% of variance in comprehension. It distinguishes between good and poor readers, and it has to do a lot of relationship with fluency more than with accuracy. And this is the doctoral thesis of Lipka Squaresky, also supervised by Karen and myself. Reading self-concept, according to Ronen's doctoral thesis, can be enhanced through intervention, and this enhancement is first predicted by reading rate, but further by improvement in reading comprehension. This is the measure of reading self-concept. When you rate yourself on several statements, are you able to understand what you read? Are you able to read difficult words on your own, and so on? And the rating goes with different types of smileys. Sometimes they smile, sometimes not. Self-regulation or self-confidence and calibration measure. Well, self-confidence reflects how sure an individual is about her or his performance. And it is commonly viewed as an integral part of regulation. And calibration of comprehension, accuracy, or bias is the matching between prediction and actual performance on the test. And we incorporated that also into the measure. Confidence, this is something that Tammy made, so we actually look at online self-regulation, on general view of the self, and this brings kind of looking at the confidence of reading. We also wanted to rate strategies used of readers while reading text and while answering questions. I have to say that the strategies were taken from all kinds of studies which were offered by Orly and Lipka, and they had to rate which strategies they use. And it's interesting that part of the strategies really reflected the simple view of reading, that I'm trying to read fast, I'm trying to read accurately, and the other statements had to do with more high-level monitoring or looking for prior knowledge and so on. Also strategizing while answering questions, so we had to write if you read the question carefully, if you search for the answers in the text. Guess not, they don't even use these strategies. We'll talk a little bit about it later. Prior knowledge was auto-tested. For example, in this text, You read about fireflies. Before you read the text, write down what you know about fireflies. And this child, for example, said, before he read the text, he said, I know about fireflies that they make light. And after he read the text, he said, I did know about fireflies, and I know now that fireflies light up only when air goes in and mixes with the materials in the bodies, because only then they light up. So there you can get what they gained in terms of new knowledge. We also inserted topic interest, which was found by several researchers as predicting comprehension. So this was our model. We had, as you see here, we had several, in terms of genre, we have a narrative, we have expository text. We tested prior knowledge in relation to expository text. They had to respond to open and closed questions in different levels after they read silently the text, and then they have to rate themselves on several measures of topic interest, calibration, reading self-concept, strategies used, and so on. But if they fail the test, then they go into the next phase, the dynamic phase, in which we test their oral reading, we analyze the reading errors, and we help them to monitor their questions where they were wrong, discuss why they were wrong, what they were thinking, and help them to go through the difficulties. Our research now, we have much more data, which I didn't have time to analyze it. It will be from Vancouver, and I promise you. We had 192 students, and they came from 2 different schools, from grades 2 and grade 3. The reliability for the text, we had 4 texts. In each grade, all the children read the 4 different texts, okay? Now, ANOVA showed that for all texts, there was significant main effect of grade level. This is developmental. And duration of test completion, we measure how much time it took them to read and answer the question. And also significant effect of sociocultural level. Because over text, kids from lower SES culture were slower in reading and completing the text. In terms of question difficulty level, in both grades, achievements were lower, were questions related to the complex reading comprehension skills, integration and integration between texts. Topic interest was really relatively high and also was correlated with comprehension. Regarding self-concept, it was lower in low SES, and it had negative correlation with time. And this is not new after Women's and Tammy's work, that self-concept was associated with fluency. And it was predicted by test completion time and by SES level. So like above 30% of self-perception of reading. Calibration. This is a measure that we're struggling with in terms of statistics. We measured the gaps. So you see here the distribution. So of course there were children who had lower gaps between what they predicted and what they actually performed. Kids who had lower gaps and higher gaps. What was interesting is the correlation between the comprehension scores and the gaps. So as you can see here, first the correlation was minus 0.672, meaning that there's a big collinearity, what you call, between this measure and the test itself. So you can't really predict one by the other. We have to think about another way of measuring calibration, but it was obvious the kids who were underestimated their performance got higher scores in comprehension, while kids who were overestimating overestimated their performance were lower in their comprehension score. And what you see here is actually the regression between comprehension and the gap scores. Furthermore, calibration of comprehension was lower among low SES. Okay, so you see here that the gap was really low, really low in the high SES and relatively higher in the low SES. Calibration was also was effect of developmental effects. So in grade 2, they were less able to calibrate what they did than in grade 3. So it's nice to see that calibration is something which develops, and it's not that developed in low SES, and you have to think how to develop it there. Overall, if you look at some of the measures, you can see that when I took the data and analyzed it according to intact and poor comprehenders, I actually took kids who were doing less than the percentile 16. And we had 39 children below the 10th percentile in all the grades. And if you look here, you see this is the comprehension, this is how I divided them, but you can see here that test performance time was lower in the low comprehension, low self-perception, and higher gap between actual performance and prediction. Strategies while reading text, I can show you that they used mainly the simple view of reading strategies and not other strategies which were, integration, and I ask myself questions, not in grade 2, they don't ask themselves questions, and they don't look for information in the text, and maybe it has to do, I don't know, with instruction or with development. We have to better understand it, but actually, as you mentioned before, Professor Vaughan, they can't use so many things when they try to read. Okay, predicting comprehension is not really something that is simple to do. All I can do now is show that putting together grade, sociocultural, self-concept of reading, and test performance time, I get about 30% of variance explained. And we need more to understand how to incorporate the calibration, because then we get above almost 60%. Some things about the dynamic phase. I don't have enough time to talk about this text, but this is a nice text about caterpillar or something which really resembles a tiger because of his eyes. And he's very, very slow, and that's why he needs these tiger eyes, and he also has some smelly things that he flash on his enemies. And I can show you that I can get first I can get a profile of the reader. So this is, for example, reading this text about this animal, small animal. This child is low in fluency, and he has intact comprehension. And what you can see here is exactly, comprehension score is intact, test performance time is slow, text rate is slow, he read it orally, text accuracy is not that good, calibration is okay because he's a good comprehender, reading self-concept is low because he's a slow reader, and use of strategies, he uses some of them. This gives you a profile of the reader. Going further to see some of the answers that they give, animals have different methods of protecting themselves from predators. Where they are told, I can't read from them. Choose 2 animals that use protective methods similar to the methods of the tiger, swallowtail, crab. So you have here actually only 2 animals that resemble this small animal. And I can show you the answers here. For example, the intact fluency and low comprehension child said, I choose the non-venomous snake because he lifts his neck and expands his body so that he will look like an enormous cobra. So actually he chooses the right example, but he doesn't explain it correctly. And the other one said, I choose the snake because a non-venomous snake lift his neck, and the tiger swallowtail make his eyes stand out, and then the enemies of both think they are other animals. It has to do a lot with language skills and expression and so on, but you now have to see that the explanation gives you more information. Another example, and this is the last one, the caterpillar is called the tiger swallowtail. The butterfly that emerges from the cocoon is also called the tiger swallowtail. Based on what you read, why does the word tiger appear in the caterpillar's name? So the intact fluent reader with low comprehension answered, because the caterpillar later turns into a tiger. So that's why the word tiger appears. And the other one answers correctly, but even if he wrote and got 0 point, I'm interested whether he couldn't express what he understood and just wrote it. Because he might, his term that he turned himself into a tiger misses the part of pretending that maybe he did it. Okay, I can also get a profile from the test across all the questions, so I can see where are what Perfetti calls the hot point. Hot points where he doesn't do that well across the questions. So finally, I'm going to the conclusions. I have one slide. It's a test that looks at a broad range of skills in a comprehensive manner, and it integrates a large number of core theories. It aims at assessing a higher order comprehension. A lot of our questions had to do with integration between text and metacognition. The monitoring takes place much more in the dynamic assessment phase, and it aims at assessing fluency, types of errors, and so on, combines static and dynamic assessment. And I think that it has a good prediction for comprehension, and we get different profiles of reader, which leads us to maybe more proper intervention. We are now in the process of standardization, and that's it. Thank you.
Michal?
Yeah.
Can you show the slide of the reader's profile, the slow reader? I wanted to ask a question about that. That one. So you can see that he's not that good of a reader, but he has high calibration, but really low self-concept, reading self-concept.
Low reading self-concept, you mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting, there are low correlation between these two measures.
And I wanted to ask, what is the educational importance of a child knowing to collaborate himself? Because if a child is really low in reading, what is the importance of him to know that he's not that good? If a high student is good, it's great that he can evaluate himself, but the low student, why is it important?
Well, I was asked this question in Orly, where the presentation was much more longer, and we were asked these questions by Professor Malcolm Margalitou. It indicates that the monitoring is low. It indicates that you don't know that you're not going well. The question is what to do now. And we struggle with this because a NATS doctoral thesis is struggling with the question of which kind of feedback you want to give the kids about this, because it might be the calibration is a kind of self-protection, or manganon agana, what you call it, and if you will take it, something bad. So, as I was told in OISE, Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, we are not going to stick our tablets like, oh, you think you did well, you didn't do well. Now, each time you get a task, say, I'm not doing well. That's not the point. The point is, maybe, it was suggested for us, maybe to do something with reciprocal teaching of children giving feedback to each other, then class. we still struggle with what to do, but we know that it is an indicator of poor monitoring. And just think about all the kids that get out of the exam and say, I did so well, and then they get 23. So the frustration is there. How to deal with it? That's enough. But I believe that we have to deal with it. Tammy believe. Tammy, you want to say anything else? Okay. Did I answer your question? Great. Thank you.